They were standing about 30 feet away, maybe less if you didn't count the crowd between us. Clara's hand rested on his arm like it belonged there. She was laughing, openly, effortlessly, at something Victor said, her eyes crinkled in that way I used to think was just for me. The sound of it, the way her fingers brushed his jacket sleeve, none of it was loud or obscene. It was intimate. Familiar. Too familiar. I was holding a glass of champagne I hadn't touched, my lips pressed tight so I wouldn't say something I'd regret. All around me, people were smiling, shaking hands, complimenting me on the evening, the exhibit, the years of contributions I'd made to aerospace innovation. But I didn't hear any of it. I was watching them. They thought they were being discreet. They weren't. Maybe they believed they had the perfect cover, two respected professionals chatting at a gala for the Langston Foundation, held in the very museum wing I'd personally helped fund. Maybe they thought the prestige of the event masked the way they leaned in close, the stolen glances, the subtle shoulder touches that no married woman should be giving a man who wasn't her husband. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel panic or jealousy or heartbreak. What I felt was nothing. Or maybe the numbness that comes after too many feelings have been shoved aside for too long. I took a step back from the group of executives I was standing with, men and women who'd once been my friends, my rivals, my co-founders, and realized I was no longer part of the story being told around me. The company had my name. The wing bore my plaque. But I wasn't the one being watched. Clara was. And Victor, standing beside her like he owned the night. It wasn't the affair that broke me. I'd already confirmed that months ago. It wasn't the fact that she chose him, the man I had once mentored and practically resurrected from irrelevance. No, what tore something open inside me was how comfortable she looked in the role I had spent years trying to sustain. She didn't look like someone trapped in a loveless marriage. She looked free, happy. While I stood there in a tuxedo that fit perfectly, in a room full of people who owed me everything, feeling like a ghost. They didn't know. Not yet. I turned away, scanning the crowd, the exhibits, the flashing cameras capturing legacy and prestige. Everyone was here for the story I built, the name I preserved, the family I thought I protected. But none of that mattered now, because while they basked in the illusion, I was already writing the final act. I brought the champagne glass to my lips, still untouched, and whispered to myself, "Let them enjoy the spotlight. They don't know I'm the one pulling the curtain." Then I smiled, small, polite, measured. I gave a quick nod to an approaching senator. And as Clara's laughter echoed behind me, I walked toward the exit, knowing full well the real show hadn't even started yet. It started 2 months earlier, not with a big moment, but a small one, Clara forgetting her coffee on the counter. She never forgot her coffee. She came downstairs already dressed, keys in hand, and kissed the air near my cheek instead of my face. "I've got to get to the lab early," she said, grabbing her bag and heading out. I didn't even get to have a good day, which was unlike her. That's what tipped me off. Not the lipstick on her collar or a phone call at midnight. Just distance. At first, I thought it was the project. She'd been working with a new design firm on some aerospace branding initiative, something about redefining public engagement in STEM. I didn't ask questions. I was proud of her. But soon, the details got fuzzy. She was vague about where she'd been. She'd come home late and say things like, "I had to swing by Nora's place," but Nora had been in Iceland that entire week. I only knew that because Nora's husband posted their vacation photos on Facebook. So I waited. Watched. I asked casual questions, nothing too direct. But she'd pause too long before answering, or get defensive over simple things. Then one morning, I found her old smartwatch in the back of a kitchen drawer. She'd replaced it months ago with a newer model and never reset the old one. Out of curiosity, or maybe instinct, I turned it on. It connected to her cloud account without even asking for a password. At first, it was nothing. Calendar entries, step counts, messages from group chats. Then I found a folder labeled Studio. Inside were photos of her and Victor. Candid ones. Smiling, leaning close together. One of them was blurry, like she didn't know the picture was being taken. Victor had taken it, based on the angle, and she was laughing, head back, eyes closed. The way she used to laugh with me. There were also messages. Some harmless. Others not. "You always see me. I feel safe when I'm with you. He's so closed off lately. I don't even know who I married." I stared at that one for a long time. Not because of the betrayal, but because she said it like I wasn't in the room every night, like I hadn't built an entire life with her. Like I was just background noise. But what struck me most wasn't anger. It was clarity. The emotional affair had been going on long before it crossed the physical line. And she hadn't just fallen for someone else, she had rewritten me to justify it. So I started documenting everything. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just for proof. Just in case. A week later, she told me she'd be in Vermont visiting her sister for the weekend. I nodded. "Tell Diana I said hi." What Clara didn't know was that Diana had posted a photo from a winery in southern France that same afternoon. The timestamp was undeniable. So I smiled. And I logged it. The woman I married had disappeared somewhere, and the person who took her place had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. After I confirmed the Vermont lie, something shifted in me. Not emotionally. I'd already passed that point, but operationally. I stopped reacting and started preparing. I hired Jonah Reich 2 days later. He came highly recommended through a colleague, ex-NSA, now running a quiet digital forensics firm out of an unmarked building in Alexandria. I didn't tell Jonah everything, just that I suspected data misuse on shared devices. He didn't ask questions. In less than a week, he gave me more than I expected. Much more. Jonah cracked into Clara's shared cloud backups and her second phone, the one she told me was for her design clients. He found encrypted message threads, dozens of calendar entries that didn't match the ones she showed me, and metadata that traced back to a location she visited weekly, a design studio in Arlington registered under a shell company. A company tied to Victor Langston. I knew the place. She once mentioned it as a creative incubator for an aerospace brand refresh. She even showed me mocked-up logos once. Nothing serious. Nothing that screamed, a fair sight. But according to Jonah's logs, Clara had been there every Thursday afternoon for the last 6 months. Sometimes Mondays, too. Always from 2 to 5. We matched her calendar against those entries. Dozens of fabricated appointments. One week she'd claimed to be at a women's mentorship panel, only for Jonah to find a timestamped video of her entering the studio with Victor, carrying takeout and laughing like they were on vacation. The most damning part? The audio files. Jonah found cached voice memos Clara had recorded to herself. Some were benign. Reminders. To-do lists. But one stood out. She was venting, maybe rehearsing for therapy, maybe just thinking aloud. I feel guilty sometimes. David hasn't done anything wrong. He's not cruel. He's just not really there anymore. He's so obsessed with legacy, with being the guy who builds things. I feel like I live in a museum. Victor makes me feel alive. She said it like I was a relic. A worn-out painting behind glass. That's when I stopped trying to understand her and started thinking like an engineer again. Emotions cloud judgment. Data reveals truth. I began restructuring the finances. Quietly. Moved joint assets into protected accounts. Froze a few discretionary cards under the guise of fraud concerns. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. I also updated the beneficiaries on my trust. Clara had no idea her name had been replaced by our children. I wasn't being vindictive. I was building a firewall. She'd chosen her path. I was simply creating the exit strategy. Meanwhile, I cataloged everything. Emails, logs, photos. I even had Jonah pull security footage from the exterior cameras at the studio. One frame said it all, Clara and Victor exiting hand in hand, her head on his shoulder. No ambiguity. No interpretation needed. I never confronted her. Not once. I kissed her goodnight. Asked how her design work was going. I played dumb because I needed her to stay comfortable. People only get sloppy when they think they're safe. And Clara? She was very comfortable. Secure in the idea that I was too distracted, too invested in appearances to ever look behind the curtain. She didn't know the curtain was already gone, that the lights were coming up, and I was standing quietly in the wings, waiting for my cue. It was a Thursday night when Clara came home late again. She was humming, actually humming, when she walked through the door. Hair tousled, cheeks flushed, like she'd just stepped out of a spa. I was already in the living room, sitting on the couch, reading. She didn't expect me to be there. "Oh," she said, caught off guard. "I thought you had that board dinner tonight." I looked up. Got rescheduled. She paused in the entryway, her smile faltering just slightly. "I didn't know. I didn't tell you. That hung in the air between us." She set her bag down a little too carefully on the hallway table and made her way into the kitchen, opening the fridge just to avoid looking at me. "I picked up Thai," she said. "There's extra if you haven't eaten." I closed my book. "How was Diana?" She froze. "Diana," she echoed. "You said you were with her today," I said mildly. "At her new branding lab, right?" A long pause. Then, "Yeah, she's good. Still jet-lagged from London, but..." "She's in Portugal," I said evenly. Saw the photos. Clara turned slowly to face me, eyes flickering, mouth tight. "David, what are you doing?" I stood up. What I should have done months ago. She tried to keep her tone calm, controlled. "I don't know what this is about, but is that why you slept with my partner?" I asked, soft but direct. "Because you were bored? Or because you needed someone to look at you the way I used to before you turned this life into a play?" Her lips parted. No protest. No denial. Just silence. That was all I needed. I didn't say another word. I walked past her, grabbed my phone from the table, and headed upstairs. The next morning, she didn't mention it. Not a single word. She acted like we'd had a mild argument and moved on. She didn't know I'd already booked my meeting with Evelyn Chase. Evelyn wasn't just a family attorney. She was surgical. Quiet. Efficient. The kind of person people didn't see coming until it was already done. We met in her office the following day. leather chairs, no windows, total discretion. I laid it all out. The affair, the messages, the video stills, the studio under the shell company, the fake alibis, the financial inconsistencies, every thread I had gathered. She sat with a legal pad, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she looked up. You're not looking for a divorce. Not yet. No, I said. I'm looking for positioning, custody, asset preservation, reputation insulation. She smiled faintly. You want to own the narrative before she realizes there's a story. Exactly. We set terms. Trust restructuring. Strategic estate planning. An airtight non-disclosure for Clara once the final blow landed, because it would. I told Evelyn about Clara's upcoming keynote, her televised design summit. Evelyn didn't flinch. She just underlined a date. That'll be the moment, then? I nodded. That's when the curtain falls. Clara thought she still held the stage. What she didn't realize was that I was already behind the scenes, rewiring the lights. Clara's summit was the kind of event she'd dreamed about for years. High gloss. Perfect lighting. Big words on banners like innovation, integrity, impact. There were sponsors, camera crews, seating charts, and hashtags. It was all so beautifully artificial. I showed up 15 minutes before her keynote. No one expected me. I didn't make an entrance. No handshakes, no photos. Just a tailored suit, and a Tindy badge, and a seat near the back, close enough to see everything, far enough to disappear if I wanted to. The ballroom was enormous. Hundreds of investors, influencers, media personalities. Clara stood on the side of the stage, smiling brightly as the MC read her bio. She looked radiant, collected, like someone who had it all under control. Then the lights dimmed, and her keynote began. She stepped onto the stage like it was hers, like she was born for it. Design is more than aesthetics, she said, her voice smooth and confident. It's about truth, about building systems that people can trust. I almost laughed. She went on about branding, leadership, the future of aerospace design, words carefully chosen to sound ethical and forward-thinking. The audience was eating it up. And then, halfway through her speech, the screen behind her flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough to catch everyone's attention. Then again, this time longer. The projector glitched, then stabilized. Only now, instead of her branded slideshow, the screen displayed muted footage. Security cam quality. Grainy. Dated last month. Clara and Victor exiting the Arlington studio. Hand in hand. There was no sound. Just a 10-second loop. Her walking closely beside him, pausing by his car. Him brushing her hair behind her ear. Her leaning in. Nothing pornographic. Nothing explicit. But unmistakably intimate. The room fell silent. Clara turned, confused, mid-sentence. She froze when she saw the footage. You could see the color drain from her face. Her hands stopped moving. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. A few audience members started murmuring. Others pulled out their phones. Sponsors glanced at each other. PR reps darted out of their seats. One of the AV techs in the back was already whispering into a headset. The screen cut to black again, then to her original slides. Too late. The damage had been done. Clara stood there, still frozen, for a full 5 seconds before she snapped back into motion. She tried to recover, stammered something about technical issues, then forced a brittle smile. But the air had shifted. The applause that followed, because people always feel obligated to clap, was short, nervous, confused. She didn't finish her keynote. Someone came up and whispered something to her offstage, and she left early, smile tight, posture stiff. I walked out quietly before the press caught wind. As I exited through the side hallway, I passed a group of investors in suits murmuring about breach of ethics, contract clauses, and image protection. One of them muttered, "That's going to cost her everything." I kept walking. Outside, the air was cool and clean. I slipped into a black car parked a block away and gave the driver one word. Home. No fanfare. No announcement. Just Clara on stage with the lights burning too hot. While I sat in the shadows, pulling every single string, Clara didn't crumble immediately. People like her never do. They pivot. They spin. And when that fails, they retaliate. Within a week of the summit, I received a formal notice. Clara was filing a custody countersuit. The grounds? Emotional alienation. Character defamation. Public humiliation. Her legal team called my exposure of the affair calculated cruelty. They claimed I orchestrated a public ambush out of spite, and that such behavior made me an unfit co-parent. I wasn't surprised, but I was ready. Evelyn had anticipated the move. We filed our response the same day, with precision, evidence, and testimony to match. I didn't have to paint Clara as unstable. She had done that herself. Our children, Grace and Owen, were 13 and 10, old enough to feel the tension but still young enough to be caught in the fog of it. I made sure they were shielded from everything. No discussions in front of them. No changed routines. No late-night arguments. Instead, I built stability. I made pancakes every Sunday morning. I kept school drop-offs and pickups consistent. I attended every piano recital and soccer match. I hired a child therapist, neutral, highly respected, who met with them privately and submitted a report to the court. Her findings were clear. The children express emotional safety and predictability in their father's home. They describe their mother as distracted, easily agitated, and often unavailable. Meanwhile, Jonah continued digging. It didn't take long before he uncovered the financial misconduct. Hidden within our shared accounts, Clara had been making regular transfers, small enough to slip under routine monitoring. But over time, the amount totaled nearly $40,000. The destination? Victor's studio. Officially, it was for consulting and design. But the records didn't lie. There was no documentation of services rendered, just transfers. We submitted the findings to the court. Evelyn called it intentional misuse of marital assets. The judge agreed. Within a month, Clara was ordered to provide a full accounting of her business finances. An audit was launched. Several sponsors had already pulled their contracts after the summit debacle, and now whispers of mismanagement were circling. And then came the court's ruling, temporary, but powerful. Clara would have supervised visitation twice a week, pending further investigation. The look on her face in the courtroom wasn't shock. It was disbelief. Like the rules she bent for so long had suddenly snapped back. Victor, on the other hand, was unraveling in real time. His name was now attached to a brewing ethics complaint. One sponsor released a quiet statement citing breach of trust. Another filed a civil claim for fraud. His shell company lost its business registration. Jonah said it best. Men like Victor build smoke. They never expect someone to bring wind. By contrast, my public image remained intact. Quiet. Steady. No interviews. No statements. Just the image of a father protecting his children. Clara still hadn't said a word to me, not since the confrontation. But every time her lawyer requested leniency or cooperation, I sent one sentence back through Evelyn. We are focused on the well-being of the children. Nothing else. Because now, that's all that mattered. And in the courtroom, for the first time, Clara's influence, her charm fell flat. The final blow didn't come from me. It came from someone who knew Victor far better than Clara ever had, his ex-wife. I received the affidavit in a sealed envelope delivered to Evelyn's office. No return address, no warning. Just 30 pages of testimony, quietly notarized, and signed by a woman named Liana Ellis Langston. I read every word. Victor, it turned out, had a pattern. A long one. The same charm, the same sob stories, the same need for support during a rough patch. Liana described a nearly identical timeline, emotional closeness, professional overlap, the slow erosion of her identity as Victor took center stage. He drained her savings, torpedoed her reputation in a boutique design firm, and when she finally left him, he framed her for intellectual property theft. Charges were dropped, but not before she lost her clients, her business, and nearly her home. Evelyn filed the affidavit as supplemental evidence in the custody case. The judge reviewed it privately. From that point on, things moved fast. The court no longer saw Clara and Victor as two flawed people in a messy romance. They saw them as reckless, codependent, and profoundly unstable. The audit into Clara's finances was expanded. More discrepancies surfaced, misuse of grant money, falsified invoices, and consulting fees that traced back to Victor's now-defunct shell company. It was unraveling in real time. Meanwhile, back home, I was still building calm. Emily, our daughter, sat me down one Saturday afternoon. She was holding her favorite book in one hand, her face pale. "Can I stay here full-time?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Of course," I said gently. "But why now?" She hesitated. Mom and Victor were fighting. Loud. About money. He called her names, and then he threw something. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, waiting for permission to be scared. I filed for emergency modification that Monday morning. Evelyn submitted the therapist's updated report, the affidavit, the audit summary, and Emily's statement. The judge granted it that afternoon. Full physical custody. Supervised visits only. No exceptions. When Clara was served the order, she didn't contest it. Not really. Her attorney filed a half-hearted objection, but there was no hearing, no formal defense. Just resignation. She'd already lost her job. Her brand partnerships had evaporated. The summit debacle had gone viral. Someone leaked the affair footage, and her pre-summit, fidelity and innovation interview side by side. The contrast was brutal. Victor had fared even worse. An anonymous tip had triggered a deeper investigation into a nonprofit he co-founded 2 years prior, one that had accepted over $200,000 in donations for a youth arts program that never existed. Fraud charges were pending. The last time I saw Clara in person was in a sterile, windowless family counseling room during her first supervised visit. She looked tired. Smaller somehow. She didn't try to apologize. Didn't ask how I was. She just sat across from Grace and Owen, trying to be someone they recognized. When the session ended, she looked at me for the first time in weeks. Her voice cracked. I didn't think it would end like this. I met her eyes, steady. You had peace, I said quietly. You torched it. Then I turned and walked out, holding both our children's hands. The fire was out. All that remained was ash. The silence was strange at first. Not the tense, heavy silence I used to feel at the dinner table with Clara. Not the kind where someone's pretending everything's fine while quietly falling apart. This was different. Clean. Still. Like standing in a house after the storm has passed, and for the first time, realizing it's yours again. Saturday morning came, and I made pancakes. Burned the first batch, as always. Grace rolled her eyes. Owen laughed and insisted the burnt one was his. We ate on the patio, the three of us in sweatpants and socks, watching squirrels chase each other through the trees. No screens. No scripts. No curated life. Just life. Victor's name had vanished from every professional directory I checked. The nonprofit he co-founded was under federal investigation, and donors were demanding statements from every company that ever partnered with him. None came. Clara, meanwhile, sold her downtown condo, the one she once called her independent sanctuary. Records showed she moved into a smaller place across town. Quiet neighborhood. No PR team. No sponsors. Her social media accounts were still active, but they told a different story now. Sparse posts. Filtered apologies hidden in captions about new beginnings and humble lessons. I didn't comment. A week after the custody ruling, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a small padded envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. You should know how deep it went. Use it if you need to. LL. Victor's ex-wife again. I plugged the drive into an offline laptop. It was encrypted, but the password was in the note. January. Her wedding anniversary, maybe. The folders were named by year. Recordings. Screenshots. Call logs. Emails. Even audio clips of Victor bragging to someone over drinks about managing women like stocks. There were other names. Other women. Other partnerships that all ended the same way, with him richer, them ruined. I copied nothing. Just watched. Just listened. Then I ejected the drive and locked it in the safe. Not as a weapon. Just as a reminder. That piece is a choice. Some nights I still thought about Clara, how long she must have lived in that lie before I noticed. How many times she stood beside me, smiling like it meant something, while quietly writing her exit. But those thoughts didn't last. Now, I end the day reading with Owen or driving Grace to theater rehearsal. I answer work calls less. I sleep more. I take the long way home. And some mornings, I stand on the porch with my coffee, watch the trees move, and let the quiet settle in my chest. This wasn't the life I planned. It was better. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. And I finally understood something Clara never did. You can chase applause and build castles from borrowed light. But the only thing that ever really matters is what still stands when the curtain falls.